This is a family-friendly
It
podcast.
is. Captain bound and double-ironed, exhausted by the weight. Hello, gentle viewers, and welcome to Mary Beth and Kate. I can't do it.
As I stare at you like...
She's staring at me the whole time. We failed miserably at trying to come up with a name for this. And then Katie's like, but do we want to keep it to just a Christmas Carol? Or do we want to branch out into other things? Katie and I, our favorite thing of hanging out together when I come down to visit her is we just watch adaptations of things that we love, which is mostly true. Jane Eyre and A Christmas Carol.
Well, and also I have a weird obsession with... Not obsession. I have a weird interest...
Fascination.
In adaptations, because there are certain properties that have been adapted many times.
Like this one.
This is one of the biggest ones. I'm not sure exactly what has the most adaptations, but Christmas Carol's up there.
Oh, yeah. I forgot. Even I wrote one for the Christmas show we did.
Well, that gets...
play on it. That gets muddy.
Yeah, that gets very muddy. And that's one of the things where... Like back in 2020 when I initially put up a list of not necessarily a top 10, just 10 adaptations of A Christmas Carol. I tried to keep the scope as narrow as possible because there are many, many loose adaptations that are more, you could say, more sort of inspired by.
Yeah. Because I think on that list you actually included Scrooge, but looking back you said you wouldn't.
No, I still would because I do consider it's one that people definitely go back and forth on. People, some consider it to be a parody, some consider it to be too loose because it's not using actual character names. But for myself, like, I like to have the basic framework. It has to not only hit the main beats, but it has to give that same feeling that more traditional adaptations give. So even though Scrooged is, a comedy and it's making fun of a lot of the ideas of A Christmas Carol, and it has the big, bombastic ending,
which we still sing along to.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it's like you leave that movie with a... I was trying to remember this song. Yeah. Like, you still leave the movie with a smile on your face. You do. No matter how many times you see it.
Even though Katie has admittedly said that it is a little too much Bill Murray.
Yes.
Bill Murraying out. Yeah. She would have preferred a more Groundhog Day Bill Murray performance, which he probably my favorite performance of him was Groundhog Day.
He needed somebody to rein him in just a little bit.
But you give him this kind of property, there's no way to rein him in.
Yeah.
This property also that we're going to... So for anyone who thinks you're going to get a cohesive, thorough line of thought, no.
We sat down and tried to start writing an outline. Even the day before, sat down trying to write an outline. 10 minutes before starting this, we're like, where do we want to start? And I said, no.
We're just going to talk.
We're just going to
talk and see where it goes. And they're like, how long should each episode be? And she's like, yes.
Yes.
So maybe we should, since this is the first episode, maybe we should introduce ourselves for the 3 people in the universe that might find this and listen to
Mary
it.
Beth, tell me all about yourself.
Well, I was born.
We're going to talk about me, are we?
Oh, goody. Okay, so... Again, for the 3 people in the universe that will come upon this podcast who don't know who Katie and I are, Katie is my bestest bestie in the fairy tale land of forever and has been since 2000 or 2001?
2001 is when we met.
So 22 years now, almost 23. That magical palindrome year of 22 years. Katie and I work wonderfully as a best friendship because I am, if you couldn't tell from the talking already, I am a little... footloose and fancy free. I'm kind of all over the place. I'm basically like a hyperactive ping pong ball, which is fine. And I love Christmas. It's my favorite thing in the universe. I'm obsessed with it. I love Christmas Carol. My favorite version is The Muppets. I'm going to put that right out there because you will hear me reference it constantly. I will dip into Poxy accents and musical notes, and Katie will do her best to edit all of those out.
What?
Probably. So each episode that is finished recording will be 47 minutes, and each one you hear will be 4.7 minutes. But yes, Katie and I met in college a million years ago, and I'm the one that she's definitely going to have to rein in. I'm the one who loves the adaptations more from watching a lot of them. I actually never read the book of Christmas Carol, but I did just listen to the 3-4 hour audiobook by Tim Curry, which was phenomenal. And Tim Curry is just king of everything anyway. And then we have Katie, who actually sits and reads these things called books. Katie, tell us about books.
What is a book? What am I holding in my hand?
Whoa, it's solid! I can turn the pages! Listen.
Oh, it's a book.
It smells like a book.
What's the never-ending story quote of, here we have small rectangular objects.
They're called books.
They make no beep 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 beeps
and require little effort on your part.
There we go.
Yep. And you'll also hear a lot of 80s fantasy reference.
Sure. But yes, and I think to contrast, Mary Beth's favorite adaptation is A Muppet Christmas Carol. My favorite version is the 1984 George C. Scott version, which is
spooky.
The spookiest version.
It is the spookiest version. We just watched it last night.
We did, yes. So that is a good comparison.
Yes.
It's also fair to say, like, yes, we met in college. Mary Beth has a theater degree. I have...
You can't tell from the everything about me.
I have a degree in English literature. That being said, though, this is not going to be an intelligent podcast.
No, if you're looking for the deeper meaning behind all of this, we will dip into sentimentality and we will dip into the deeper meanings of things.
Neither of us have any idea what we're talking about.
We are just two girls that love to talk about a thing, so we're talking about a thing.
Indeed.
We should call it We're Gonna Do a Thing.
We're gonna do a thing.
We're gonna do a thing. No, I'm kidding. Apparently, when I direct... I also direct and when I'm in shows as well. But when I direct, apparently I always say, I want to try a thing or I want to do a thing. It's gotten to the point where one of my cast members of Heather's created a bingo board for my constant things that I kept doing, and that was on there.
I can imagine.
So, yeah, want to do a thing.
Yeah.
So this is us doing a thing and talking about something that we love.
Sure.
We literally tried to sit down and make rules. We came up with 2. We only have 2 rules.
What are our 2 rules?
Our 2 rules to discuss an actual one at length, not just referencing.
Yeah.
We can reference any number of these.
Sure.
But to speak of it at length, it has to be an actual adaptation. And we have to both have seen it.
Yes.
Yeah. So Katie gave me homework. She gave me 3 Christmas carols to watch. I watched 1, and it was the shortest one. And so we are not talking about the other 2 yet, but we will.
Right.
And we did watch the George C. Scott one again last night because I hadn't seen it in years.
Yes.
And it had Super Snack Roger Reese in it as Nephew Fred.
And we will talk about a non-adaptation.
Yes.
Which is good to do for this particular intro episode, just to kind of talk a little bit about like why I may not consider something to be an adaptation. And I think it's fair to say that as far as those types of rules, I would be the stickler among the 2 of us. Because
you'd be the stickler with any kind of rules.
Because otherwise we'd be here discussing the Catherine Tate Christmas Carol episode just because it has Catherine Tate
and David Tennant in
it. That would be the only reason we would talk about it. And I'm like, we would be here for eternity if we spread the adaptation idea that far.
All I'm saying now, though, is I want risotto. Oh, risotto! You have to watch the Catherine Tate Christmas special with David Tennant, and you'll want risotto too. I'm just saying.
I don't know if that's the
yeah, it's the Nan when he comes. He's the most Christmas present.
I get it, but I'm saying I don't think that's the vibe that I get from it of wanting risotto.
Oh no, I just want risotto. Every time I hear risotto now, someone's like, "Oh, we serve risotto." I just hear David Tennant in his beautifully flamboyant presentation of the Ghost of Christmas Present, clapping his hands gaily, going risotto, risotto, risotto. It's okay. Moving on. This is what this whole thing's gonna be, guys. It's not gonna be intelligent.
You should be happy too that there are no visuals for this, because a lot of it is me looking at Mary Beth going,
Yep. Okay.
So then let's start at least with the one homework assignment.
Okay.
The Mr. Magoo
Christmas
Christmas
Magoo
Carol.
Christmas from 1960s. What year was that?
That is 1962, I think.
I'm gonna shine, shine, shine.
Do I have that? Mr. Magoo. I mean, it's obviously here, but 62. Yeah,
62. Okay.
So Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol.
Ooh, it was a whole thing.
Well, the thing, that's one that a lot of people bring up as a reference, and this is something that I will say. I said it, while we were sitting and just talking yesterday, that the majority of Christmas Carol adaptations are the types of movies that you can just put on in the background.
Yes.
You know what? Actually, I wonder if we should back up for a second before we get into a specific adaptation. Because let's live in a world where perhaps somebody has never seen A Christmas Carol.
Oh.
Because it happens.
Okay.
So let's talk about...
Hello, new person to the world.
Yeah. The high-level story beats of A Christmas Carol.
Okay.
And this plays sometimes into what is considered an adaptation and what is not. And how we'll get into things like Mr. Magoo that play with those foundations.
Yeah.
So, of course, you have your main character of Scrooge. He is a miserly old gentleman who is mean to everyone.
But especially Bob Cratchit.
Yeah, or who is his employee. He has a nephew, Fred, who is very happy and outgoing and just wants to be nice to him. So Scrooge, on Christmas Eve, is visited by the ghost of his dead friend, Bob Marley. No, not Bob Marley.
Bob Marley? That's a me mistake. I would
That
not.
is a you mistake.
Anyway, Bob Marley comes and plays some tunes.
I felt it like the wrong thing coming out of my mouth.
Anyway, Jacob Marley
was
was his bestest bestie, and they could...
Bob Cratchit and Jacob Marley got together and had a son, and his name was Bob Marley, and he got stoned all Christmas.
This is a family-friendly podcast.
I'm the smart one here.
I would just like to point out that yes, she is.
Yeah.
So I don't know where that leads.
See previous statement if we don't know what the hell we're talking about. So Jacob Marley, yes, visits Scrooge, tells him he will be visited by 3 spirits to save him from an afterlife of drudgery.
Yes. He will be, otherwise he will be doomed to condemn so after death.
Yes.
And he will be visited by the ghost of Christmas past, my personal fave, the ghost of Christmas present, who our friend Erica Enoch has constantly told me I am.
I didn't know that past was your favorite.
Past is my favorite, yeah. I have this, probably because I have this, this is going to come as a shock to you, Katie, knowing me for half my life. I have this deep obsession with the past and my past mistakes and going over them over and over and over.
That's more like I would have thought present, just because you're so about the spirit of Christmas.
I am about the spirit of Christmas, and that's Erica Enoch Grotto always tells me. She goes, "You are the ghost of Christmas present, like you are." Yeah. And then the ghost of Christmas yet to come, which hardly ever speaks. They, the ghost, the black cloak, hardly ever speaks. Mostly,
it's not supposed to speak.
No,
just
but
point.
Yeah, it points ominously. Yeah. But I mean, in some versions. Yeah, not. Katie. Katie's twitching because I know what she's thinking.
Yeah. We'll get there.
Anyway, and then I would like... so anyway, he's visited by the 3 ghosts. Respectively, each of those ghosts take him to the past, to the present, and then they show him what is to come if he does not change his miserly ways.
Right.
So... that is what we are going to be discussing.
Sure.
Some versions do it extremely well. Some do certain parts really well, but other parts fall short. Some versions are, like, the actual audiobook is close to 4 hours, I think, if it's not 4 hours total.
It's less than 3 hours, yeah.
But then you can have an absolutely amazing version of A Christmas Carol that's centered for children in Mickey's Christmas Carol, which was my very first Christmas Carol, still one of my absolute favorites. Best Tiny Tim, and I love Robin the Frog from Muppet's Christmas Carol. No, that's true. They're tied. I love them both. Tiny Tim, honestly, is a character I'd kind of just want to punt kick out the door most of the time. He's too precious for me to... Too precious. I can't see it. Oh, Mr. Scrooge. But, like, anyway. But they can have a short version like that. You can also have an entirely crap version in half an hour, which Katie and I watched last night. And boy, was that an experience. It was narrated by Vincent Price, who was the only good thing about that. Was it?
Yes.
It was only half an hour, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like 25 minutes.
It's even listed in Wikipedia as an extremely low-budget version of A Christmas Carol, and boy, is that true.
Yeah, if you've ever seen the Riff Tracks Yule log, that is the version that they use to riff on, and it's hilarious. But it's something that is that bad is easy to take in, a half an hour. Yeah. Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol is of a similar length to Mickey's Christmas Carol.
It's about 45 minutes-ish. Yeah.
Is it?
It is. Yeah. It's long because it's like 52 minutes with songs.
Okay. Yeah. And
so
let's get into it.
Okay, let's get into it. So, and we will probably be comparing it a lot to Mickey's Christmas Carol because they both. Yeah. Here's the thing: Mickey's Christmas Carol has like the song at the beginning. Da 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 da. That always lived in my heart as a beautiful adaptation of A Christmas Carol. And then of similar length, that has the music in the beginning. Then you have Mr. Magoo's Christmas. And I've always had a soft spot in my heart for Mr. Magoo because he reminded me of my Pop Pop.
I was going to say, you're the one that wanted to watch this particular version.
I did want to watch this one. did not hold up the way I wish it would have. And I think I was talking to Daddy about it earlier this week when we were talking about the podcast, because I think it's been a good 30 years or so since I've seen Mr. Magoo. Is at least 20 years. And I'm like, and after I watched, I'm like, you don't need to go back.
Yeah.
You don't need to go back.
If you have fond memories of Mr.
Keep
Magoo,
those fond memories. So basically the gist of the Mr. Magoo is, the character himself is this, he was from the 50s, I think.
Yeah, and he's just sort of...
He's a comic character.
Yeah, he's
a little old man that can't see.
Little old man can't see and is kind of clueless.
Yeah.
And there's a framing device that is pretty much just at the beginning. Mm-hmm. They kind of cut to it a little bit throughout, but like it starts out with him as his Mr. Magoo character bumbling through town to get to a stage production.
Yes, driving down one-way streets, going in the wrong place, the wrong doors.
So in the context of this movie, the Christmas Carol is a stage show
that he is starring in.
Yes.
So this version. Okay, so the animation for the time was very good. Like, I enjoyed the animation.
But yeah, it was of the time.
It was of the time. Like, looking at it now, you're like, oh boy, that was a thing.
Like, if you think
but
of
for
how
the early
things,
60s.
I mean,
television special. It's not.
Yeah, if you think of things how, like, Scooby-Doo looks. It's very, like, only a couple frames of animation. Where he's, like, pouring coins, and the pile of coins does not
change. Yeah, you're right. Never mind. I was trying to be kind.
It's of the time.
Yeah.
So it's like if you're going in expecting the beautiful animation that even 2D animation that we see even 20 years later, you're not going to see it. You will not have it. No. That being said, the movie itself is roughly from start to finish, I would say it's about 47 minutes long. Mm-hmm. Okay? There were 11 songs. Mm-hmm. I am a musical theater person. That was my college thing. That's what I do with my life when I'm not doing my actual real life job, and I still pull it in there as well. Too many songs. Mm-hmm. There were too many songs, and some of them were just not good. And the gentleman who played Mr. Magoo, not a singer, but it's a little hard. Like, Bob Cratchit was the only one with a British accent, like, in the whole thing. It was just Bob Cratchit. But he comes on and he's singing before the show starts. He's like, it's great to be back on Broadway. And it's that old kind of Broadway feel. But it's like, okay, that song goes on a little too long. Each of these songs go on just a titch too long. Yeah. For a production as short as this, they go on too long. And because of that, they sacrifice
the story.
They sacrifice
There's
the story.
no Fred. There's no nephew. The nephew Fred does not exist. Scrooge is just a jerk. Bob is sad. There's no Fred, but they have a time to sing a song where Scrooge is like, "Ringle, ringle coins," and Bob's like, "Cold, it's cold, Mr. Scrooge." Like, we know it's cold. You said so in 3 seconds. We don't need a song. Instead, why don't you introduce Fred, the nephew, who's a very big part of this story because it's the only familial connection Scrooge still has. But no, we'll do a song instead. It's fine. And then it jumps right from him leaving and Bob singing about it being cold to Scrooge being at home and there being ghosts. Jacob Marley showing up. Or Bob Marley with some drinks.
Bob Marley with some little
yeah. Little doobage, you know. It's fine.
Yep.
Maybe that's why Scrooge saw ghosts.
Hey.
Maybe it should have been Bob Marley all along.
Hell yeah.
Anyway, so there are songs pretty much right from the get-go.
Yeah. To stop for a minute on the songs, I will say, like, Mr. Magoo as Scrooge is fine. Because when you look at established characters playing roles within A Christmas Carol, there's some that work and there's some that don't work. And it is very fair to compare this to both a Mickey's Christmas Carol, and to compare it to Muppet Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's also where you can get into the gray area of, like, TV episode adaptations, where if you have an adaptation that becomes too much about the characters you already know, and it takes away from the actual storytelling, which I have some gripes about that with both Mickey's Christmas Carol and Muppet Christmas Carol. And I like a Muppet Christmas Carol, but I feel like when you have an established character and lean too much on that character's character.
You're thinking of Miss Piggy, aren't you?
No, I'm actually thinking of the Marleys.
Oh, okay. That's
Yeah.
I can't. I love the Marleys though.
It's a fun song, but it's not Jacob Marley.
Mm-hmm.
It's supposed to really instill fear. But
I will say that also Mickey's Christmas Carol didn't do Marley right because of Goofy.
Goofy's
and
exactly
again,
where I go with that.
Love it.
Love it.
Yeah. But Goofy is Goofy.
He's
Goofy the whole time. He's not Scrooge McDuck. You believe is Scrooge.
Yeah.
Like there's no, and you believe Mickey is Bob Cratchit. And
Yeah.
same as Kermit. You believe Kermit is Bob Cratchit because they both have that
They work.
sweet demeanor that fits for that character.
And the thing too, where like I don't want to go too far off the rails, but I will. I can appreciate the insertion of a known character when it's a tiny role.
Yeah.
Like one of my favorite bits, as I said about A Muppet Christmas Carol, is Animals Are Strained Triangle playing just ding, because you know he wants to lose it. But it's not related to other characters in the story. It's just a little
contained thing.
Yeah. But when you have a character of Jacob Marley and you know what that character is supposed to do for Scrooge, and you're like, all right, we're being silly and more comical, and I'm like
Katie even said yesterday when we were watching Mickey's Christmas Carol, which again made my heart so happy. I love that version.
It's a good adaptation.
But when Goofy goes through the whole thing, Ebenezer Scrooge doing his thing, and he makes it the whole way, even being clumsy, until he leaves at the end, and then he does a woo!
Yeah.
And Katie's like, they had to get the Goofy thing in there, which they did, and it's for kids, and for who they made it for, that one I would venture to say is predominantly for children. Muppets, I feel, are always universal to everyone.
Sure.
But I feel that one, kids are like, it's Goofy,
And I think, to jump back to Mr. Magoo, I think it's fair to say Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol is also primarily for children.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the reason for the slightly mindless songs.
Yeah, because they could just kind of,
the songs,
kids bop.
Yeah, the songs, perhaps with the exception of Belle's song, don't add anything.
No.
We don't. I mean, it's hard not to focus so much on the songs because the songs probably take up more than a third of the runtime.
They do. Yeah, and they shouldn't.
They really shouldn't. And I mean, the one that sticks out the most is the Cratchit song. Probably also
that one.
But that also plays into a big problem that we both have.
Yeah, with the terrible depiction of the Cratchits.
Exactly.
Not Bob.
Not Bob.
Bob's great,
fine.
but his family's crap in this movie.
Yeah.
In Mr. Magoo. So we'll start with Marley and then we'll go down if that's okay.
Honestly, I'm struggling to even really remember Marley.
I don't really remember Marley in this one. Yeah,
I think it happened so fast.
It was very quick.
Yeah.
Marley didn't do much in this one. But again, Scrooge was fine because he was playing, or Magoo was fine because he was playing Scrooge. And it was never like a side wink, hey, Mr. Magoo.
Right.
They had a few moments where I'm guessing they were for commercial breaks, where they panned out from the stage and you saw the stock audience, which is just a drawing of people in the audience watching from behind. But yeah, so they had, first of all, Mr. Magoo did something which I thought when I was watching it, I got a bad version of it. I'm like, oh, they did this wrong. Because they had the first ghost is the Ghost of Christmas Present.
Yeah.
And I'm like, did they cut so much that they cut the Ghost of Christmas Past? No. They literally just put the Ghost of Christmas Present first. And he's Santa Claus looking, like a lot of the presents are, but if you look at the cartoon, if you watch it, he's the same color, his robe and his skin, with just some white fur, as the coat. And I'm like, that's awkward.
Yep.
So actually, we do see Bob Cratchit right at the beginning with his family. We never see Nephew Fred because he doesn't exist in this version.
Right.
So the Cratchits, where you will hear me say this, I have a big problem with Tiny Tim, which is funny coming from a girl who has a teddy bear companion. That's my basic little Tiny Tim everywhere. But most of the Tiny Tims I just find way too precious. However, two versions kill it at Tiny Tim, which is Mickey's Christmas Carol and Muppet's Christmas Carol. Those two Tiny Tims are gold. Love them. This Tiny Tim is probably my least favorite Tiny Tim of any because he's a little shit.
What's your language?
He's a little schnickerdoodle. I don't know. Katie says this is for families, and I'm trying not to swear.
Family-friendly Christmas podcast.
This Tiny Tim sucks. Because Tiny Tim is, for as much as I can't stand the precociousness, he is pure light and love and wonder. Like this, he's always like, God bless us, and I believe the best. And God will see that Jesus made lame men walk and blind men see. He's got this innate vulnerability and sweetness to him. This little Tiny Tim is a little jerk who only cares about raspberry dressing, and he looks pissed, like in a bunch of the songs. First of all, Katie was just saying, and I thought we had more to cover first, but I forgot Present went first.
Yeah.
But the Cratchits suck.
Mm-hmm.
Bob Cratchit's fine, because Bob Cratchit's like, my darling, the children, we will have blessings someday. Yeah. And then you have Mrs. Cratchit like, nope, everything sucks. And then you have the kids going, nope, everything sucks. Mm-hmm. We want this. And they give them their Christmas dinner, and the kids are like, well, this sucks. And they're just looking down like, meh. And Bob sings about, let's think about our blessings then while we count our blessings now. Which is a very Bob Cratchit thing to say.
Yes.
And it fits perfectly. But Katie even said, like, because you've read the book, and I listened to it, but this part was about a week ago, so it's a little... But the Cratchits never complained.
No.
They knew they had a shitty situation, and they dealt with it.
Yeah.
You know? To have this version where everybody but Bob is just a total jerk about it, mm-hmm. and complaining, and yeah, guys, I get it. It's Christmas. You want to have the goose. You want to have this.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to find the exact quote in the book, but there's a statement in the book where it says, even specifically, that any of the Cratchits would blush to even think of saying anything critical about mm-hmm. the lack of food in front of them. And to have in this Mr. Magoo's adaptation
the
whole family like frowning every time a dish was opened and seeing their disappointment with mm-hmm. what they have for Christmas dinner was too much.
It was, because if you watch any version, the kids care so much about their parents' feelings. Mm-hmm. One of the visions, again, Mickey's Christmas Carol, that sticks out in my head is Tiny Tim watching Mickey cut up like one single bean, and Tiny Tim tries giving him the drumstick, and it's just this really sweet thing. Mm-hmm. And then in this one you have, nope, we hate everything, we're ticked, why don't we have a nice Christmas? And then they sing about all the stuff they wish they had.
Yeah.
I get wanting things, and I get, them being like, for cinematic value, let's have them, but it doesn't fit. Yeah. It's not the family at all, and it makes them seem really kind of crappy. And the Cratchits are the good people in this.
Sure. And even like talking about the animation and what's going on, like, part of me wants to be critical about how poor both in this and Mickey's Christmas Carol they make them look with like the one single pea. But also like it's for kids, and kids aren't going to understand it unless it's more dramatic.
Yeah.
Having the cracked cups and
mm-hmm.
nothing. But the fact that, the Cratchits are sad about what they're seeing, and, like, that's not them at all.
They were always, no matter how poor they were, no matter how bad things were, they were always still grateful and happy.
Yeah.
And this one just completely, even Tiny Tim just has this look of, I'm so mad. And I'm like, that's the one that got me. Yeah. I'm like, no.
All he dreams of is
raspberry dressing.
It's awful. And that song is obnoxious.
It's so obnoxious. Most of these songs are obnoxious. Getting to a song that is not obnoxious, because mm-hmm. Present pretty much only stops at
only the Cratchits.
So we go back in time, and we have a little ghost. And he has like a weird kind of voice with a little flame above his head.
Right.
For Ghost of Christmas Past. Hello, Scrooge. And you can't tell if it's male or female. It's just the Ghost of Christmas Past. Actually, the only two songs in the whole thing I like are both in the past.
Sure. Yeah.
Which is he goes back and sees little Scrooge, and there's one called I'm All Alone in the World. Mm. And it's like, where is the shoe that's click to my clack, I'm all alone in the world. Again, it's a little too long, but it has older Scrooge joining younger Scrooge, which is something repeated in Muppets Christmas Carol, much better many years later. Mm. But I like that song. It's Scrooge, back watching his younger self. And then they go to Belle, the woman that he falls in love with. When they change her name in some versions, I never understood that.
But the thing with this too is like they don't even introduce him being in love with her. They just show their breakup.
Yeah. No, they meet at a party, and he goes, "Oh, she's saying no to." I just sat through this again.
I may have blocked it out.
I just sat through this again 2 days ago.
May have blocked it out.
So basically, they. Oh, and this version also talks about Dick Wilkins.
Sure.
Which most other versions. Yeah, I'm like, oh, we don't have time for Nephew Fred, but let's talk about Dick Wilkins, who was apprenticed with Scrooge at Fuzzywigs. I am thinking of Muppets. Anyway.
Only an adaptation you're familiar with.
So you see Belle in the corner like, he, and a boy goes up and she's he, and they walk away, and Scrooge is like, haha, see how she says no to all of them, but she says yes to me. Mm-hmm. Something also funny about the Mr. Magoo, even when he's like a 10-year-old boy, he still has the permanent eyes closed.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's just the drawing style. So he's with this woman named Belle, and then they dance together, and then it immediately goes to, let's see, Another Christmas. And you see them, and there's beautiful emotion on her side, and she's
Sure.
like, another idol has displaced me.
Her song.
What
is the
idol
only
has
one-
displaced you?
Yeah, her song is the only good one.
It's a beautiful song. It's called Winter Was Warm, and it's, winter was warm, and it's, the animation's kind of weird though, that you don't know if she's singing it as the character or if it's just voiced over as they're sitting there, because the animation was
yes.
not. Yeah.
The answer is
yes. But it's a beautiful song, and it's almost verbatim and points from the book where she's like, another idol has displaced me. I release you. And he's like, have I sought release? Not in words, but in who you choose to follow or, basically worship, I guess, which is money. And so she releases him. And she's like, would you want to stay with someone who can offer you nothing? Which is a lot more than we get from some other versions. And Muppet Christmas Carol is guilty of that. She's just like, oh, another year, you loved me once, we're done. Kind of thing. We will get to the whole love is gone because that's one of my favorite things in the universe, that whole scene. Anyway, it's fine. But the past of Mr. Magoo, absolutely the best. And Ghost of Christmas Present does like to taunt him because at the end he's like, my time grows short. Hee 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 hee. And then Future's there. And he's just kind of a floating cloak and takes Scrooge to see Tiny Tim being dead. Was not sad about it. Scrooge was. That's something some versions do a lot better than others. It always kind of got to me that Scrooge just was like, not Tiny Tim. I'm like, what do you have for this kid? You just met him for like 5 seconds when Present takes you to see the house. Some performances, movies, and actors display it a lot better than others. Mr. Magoo, I'm like, why would you be sad this shitty kid died? He was a little jack. So one thing that this version does, which no other version has ever done because they haven't made it a musical, but also in terms of the ghost itself, it takes Scrooge to the grave, he sees it, and then the ghost leaves. And Scrooge is left alone, without the ghost, without anybody there. He's left alone sitting on his grave, singing a reprise of I'm All Alone in the World. And I actually really liked that for what it was, because he really is alone. Even the ghost left at this point. It's like, if you've never seen a version of it before, you're like, does Scrooge just haunt this grave? Like, is he just gonna chill here or what? And then, of course, it goes to commercial break, and when it comes back, Scrooge is in bed. So there was no real, immediate worry. But they did have Scrooge reprise the song about being all alone in the world, which kind of makes you think he was never always like this. He became like this because of what happened to him. I think I'm judging Katie's expression. I'm delving a little too deeply into this.
You are digging too deep into Mr. freaking Magoo's Christmas Carol, which sucks.
It doesn't suck.
And you missed one of the suckiest parts of Future. The
ragged
Bone Man song.
Okay, that's true. So Future was stupid Tiny Tim dying, which nobody cared about. And then it was about a 5-minute scene of the 3 people that rob Scrooge when he's dead.
Yeah.
Which is in the book, obviously in all the adaptations, but they have a song, dun, 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 dun. And they seriously use that in there. I'm trying to think what the song was, but it's just like how they robbed him. And we're despicable. It's called The Plunderer's March. It's not a good song. And it spends way too much time and way too much weird animation talking about how they robbed him and what they took from him and stuff. I get it. It was another song. But not great. And then at the end of the movie, of course, Scrooge wakes up. This is one of the weird parts. I told Katie, I'm like, this one unsettled me a little bit because Scrooge woke up and he's, again, quoting directly from the book. That's awesome. I am quite like a baby. I am like a drunk man, blah, blah, blah. And then he goes to the window and talks to the kid like he always does. And Mr. Magoo, though, as Scrooge, just kind of keeps making all these weird poses in the window. Like he's lying on his back with his hand over his head. It's just weird animation. But it's like, okay, you do you, boo. And then he shows up at the Cratchits and does his whole thing, and then Tiny Tim's riding him like a horse, and I'm like, it's weird looking. I don't know. And at the time, I'm sure it was fine. It's one of those things looking back, you're like, no, that's weird. And Bob Cratchit's just off to the side going, you are quite like a boy again, Mr. Scrooge. And Mr. Scrooge is there like riding like a horse, and Tiny Tim's on his back, and I'm like, that's weird. It's weird now. And then, of course, the movie ends happily. Everybody applauds Mr. Magoo. He breaks the set because he's Mr. Magoo. The end. Reprise of Winter Was Warm. Not the best version. However, I know it's the favorite version of quite a few people. I was actually talking to a friend of mine the other day, and she's like, oh, I love Mr. Magoo. And I think if I had not watched it again, I would have still loved Mr. Magoo. Because I had it in my mind, just little bits and pieces. And then watching it again, I'm like, oh, no. That's not Yeah. And again, I love the character because he reminds me of my Pop, not so much for this actual adventure.
Mm-hmm.
So on a scale of, I feel like we should come up with a scale of 1 being a terrible and 10 being a great. Where do you fall on adaptations?
I don't know if it's necessarily fair to do because I would be interested to hear what someone's justification is that it is their favorite adaptation. And sometimes it might be a nostalgia factor. Like, I can even say back in 2020 when I first went through and did a list of adaptations, I had a really hard time going through and filtering out personal preference versus what is actually a good adaptation. And I feel like I can rather justifiably say that, and if you are looking for a watchable, enjoyable adaptation of A Christmas Carol, Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol is not it.
No.
Some people might have a nostalgia feeling.
And nostalgia is very, very much a strong motivator.
But if you haven't seen it in 20 years or more and you still say that you love Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol,
keep it safe in your memory.
Yes.
Keep it safe there.
Maybe don't watch it. If you watched it as a kid and you really enjoyed it, then that reinforces the idea that it's for kids.
Yeah.
And sure, for ourselves, we are in our 40s. So when we were kids, a lot of cartoons that we saw were of this similar animation.
Yeah.
Like, Scooby-Doo and all that kind of stuff was still on TV all the time. Saturday mornings, you'd
Flintstones,
see,
all the good things,
So that style of animation was fine. But if you tried to show this to kids today...
Oh, it would get ripped apart.
Yeah, especially with kids who have no concept of who Mr. Magoo is.
Yeah,
because like, I can't even necessarily say that that's a reason to watch it, because myself, even having grown up with a lot of those cartoons, I never cared particularly for Mr. Magoo. It was just, I was aware of him.
Yeah. And I only cared for him, again, because of the familiar difference of how he looked to my family members.
So I have no personal connection to this adaptation.
I never need to see this again. However, I would say, if you ever want to turn on your YouTube Music, Spotify, Amazon Music, throw on Winter is Warm. It really is a beautiful song. It's a beautiful song for when it's cold, the snow is falling, and you're just looking at the snowfall from outside. And you're feeling just a touch melancholy. Do that. That is the best I can give you from this version, is to do that.
And I can say, too, if you are looking for adaptations to rip on, because there's plenty of them, this can definitely be added to the list.
Add this to your collection.
And it's short. It's less than an hour long. It's something to put on in the background at Christmas if you like that. Sure. That's fine. To jump back, real quick, I wanted to say about the Rag and Bone Man scene. This is a problem with several other adaptations, is that it's making those characters too villainous.
Yeah, and they're not villainous. They're trying to survive.
Sure.
They have a line saying a woman has right to take care of herself.
They can be a little bit shady, but yes, that's all they're trying to do is just... Mrs. Dilber is saying in the scene, everyone has the right to take care of themselves.
Yep.
They spend pages of the book justifying what they have done because they know it's shady, but... they need the money. Yeah. So, but to play it up purely as these are the most dirty, villainous, thieving
and they do it.
scamps.
They make it the villainous song, and it's like they're not villains. And because for as much as I've heard the line, there are no prisons, no workhouses, and you think prison, you think prison. Workhouses, I honestly, legit never gave much thought to it. And Katie's like, no, they're awful. And I'm like, let me Google. Holy crap! Families were separated. People were given a place to stay, but they had to work from sun up to sundown. And were given minimal food. It was malnutritious.
Families were separated.
Yeah, they were. Yeah. And they were given one uniform to wear. I don't know how often it was ever washed or laundered. And basically, they worked in these workhouses just for the right to sleep at night indoors.
Right. And you were indebted to the system when you stayed there. So quite often, you would go there as a place of refuge and get stuck there because you would be in debt to them. And then the whole idea of prison, there's debtor's prison that they would put you in until you could pay your debt. And you can't pay your debt while you're in prison, not working.
No.
And as I said before, Charles Dickens himself had a lot of familiarity with these systems.
Which I didn't know this either.
Yep. His father had been in debtor's prison. He had to deal with the legal system. I believe he spent a portion of his life living right across the road. I don't know if it was specifically from a prison, but there were executions taking place right outside his residence. So, like, if you look at many of his novels, each one, I don't know if it's every single novel, but many of them tackle a specific system.
Yeah.
Like, of course, Oliver Twist goes after the workhouses. Bleak House goes after the court system. Little Dorrit goes after the debtor's prison, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And
I have read none of those books. But I've seen Oliver. I saw like an 8-hour production again in university years ago, and it was wonderful.
Yeah. But all we ever get is gruel. Yeah.
Green round, glorious food.
Yep.
Oh my God. They did that production again. Like, they did Oliver, the musical, at the Academy last year. It was a fantastic production of a show I can't stand. I went to see it because I had friends in it. They did a beautiful version of it. Hate that musical.
Yeah, I still have a fondness. Like, I enjoy the movie adaptation of it. And a fun little piece of trivia, if you're interested, that ties back to Christmas Carol. One of the adaptations that I asked you to watch, the Albert Finney version, uses sets from that movie.
Does it seriously?
Yes,
that does not surprise me.
Yeah,
we'll get to a lot of these versions. And we have more versions coming up. I feel like this would be a good place to stop this one so that we're not.
Really?
I don't know. We can keep going.
We can keep going.
Okay.
Unless you want to stop here and start another one immediately.
I would start another one immediately.
Okay.
This is just for people listening to be like, oh my God, is this 17 more hours?
Probably.
How far have we got? How long are we?
We're about 45 minutes.
Hey! I think that's a good place to stop for the first one.
Okay.
And then we'll be back in 5 minutes, but who knows how long it will be to you.
Ooh.
Okay. Ebenezer!
But yeah,
anyway,
we don't know how many of these we're going to make. We don't know how far apart they're going to be. Because right now we are in the room together.
Yes.
Able to record these. Once we are no longer in a room together,
it's going to be harder.
These.
I won't be back again until November. We might just spend about 8 hours today talking about different versions of A Christmas Carol and record a whole bunch of episodes.
I'm here for it.
And then watch another one and come back and talk about that. It might be a thing. We'll see. We'll see. We don't have a tagline. We don't have a sign-off. I suggested a tagline that one of my best friends from college was like, if it's not the Muppets, I hate it. If it ain't the Muppets, I hate it. There you go.
I reject that immediately.
Anyway, we will be back whenever you press play again. Thanks for listening to our completely nonsensical, non-educated thoughts on A Christmas Carol.
I'll try to talk more next time.
She shall try.
Trying to get a word in edgewise with Mary Beth. Mary Beth, pause. Mary Beth, pause for breath.
Katie gave me cold brew this morning. It falls only on herself. I'm sorry.
And then tea.
And I'm drinking tea right now, too, because it's British, yay!
All right, so we'll come back again with another adaptation.
So please, come back soon and listen to Mary Beth and Katie's... we don't have a title.
No.
We're talking about A Christmas Carol. 2 girls and A Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
Talking.
Good.
About stuff.
We're done. Bye.